Hi, and welcome to Heaven. This is Julia Kibilda.
And Raquel Alves.
And today we are drinking the same wine that we did last time, actually, just because we had a bit of it left over. And on that note, we will be discussing a not so light topic of over-sexualization of young girls. How fun, guys!
I mean, we just wanted to have something fun for the Christmas season.
Yeah, light, easy breezy. If
Yeah.
you're, doing your Christmas cooking, Christmas shopping, something nice and fun to keep you entertained, enraged, in high spirits.
Exactly. So we actually thought talking about this initially because of the DiCaprio situation with his new girlfriend. Of course, it's not so new anymore, but it's kind of how it spiraled this whole idea.
Yeah, we were talking about how it kind of became normalized to assume this is like a regular scenario happening, and it's we make fun of this online and everywhere, and everyone's like, oh, Leo DiCaprio dating someone under 25 once again. But then when you actually think about it, this is a very prevalent issue that is kind of happening, and it's being normalized now through social media and all of that. And we kind of started talking about our own experiences and how it was more common for us to get sexualized and catcalled when we were like 15, 16, minors, like barely adults. We didn't really understand it. Like, we knew what was happening, but we didn't really understand it. Then it is for us now when we're in our mid-20s.
Mm-hmm.
And it made me really think about that. Like, I never consciously kind of stopped to think about it, and made me like really saddened and disgusted in a way. So really wanted to like strike a conversation about this, because I think it's very important to talk about these things out loud and kind of go in depth into where the problem really is. Like, why is this even happening, and why are young girls these objects for desire for men? And I think, as we kind of mentioned before, it's because it's so easy for men to mold these young girls into who they think they want.
Yeah.
Which in a sense ties to our previous episode about, finding someone who fits in your life perfectly.
Yeah, in a way, but way more twisted, right? And just very concerning. I feel like with the DiCaprio situation is really, sure, the jokes are funny, I won't lie, but the fact that we keep just joking about it and not taking to a real issue, it's a bit jarring to me on how normalized this is. I saw this this graphic. I think it was in a video, so I have no clue where it's from. It was actually it made me feel so, I don't know, like I just felt so bad and disgusted about it, where they did like kind of a census, and they asked only like white women and white men, and they asked for like a range of white women from their 20s until their 50s.
Yep.
What they find, which age they find like a man attractive, and you would see that the women would pair it up to close to their ages. So like a 23-year-old will find a 27-year-old attractive. You will see a 40-year-old woman finding a 43 man attractive. Still a bit older than them, but around the same age
gap. Yeah, like similar level. Yeah.
It's just gonna be super upsetting and sad, where you compare to all the white men from the same demographics, so from 20 to 50, all of them, and I'm not joking, all of them said between 20 to 30.
That's insane. Actually,
even 20 to 27, so before 30.
Yeah, but you know what? I actually had a conversation about it with someone I know who's a guy, and this kind of came about when we were talking about dating apps and our experiences, because we were both on them, and I just casually asked him like, oh, and he's older than me, he's 27 now, and I asked him like, oh, what is your age range on dating apps? And he said something that really disturbed me, and it starts from 19.
Yeah. And how old is he?
27.
Yeah.
And I made a face, like, I if you know me, I can't really hold emotions out of my face, so I obviously made a quite explicit expression that was slightly shocked and appalled in a way. And he immediately said something that was even worse, which was, oh, don't look at me like that. Some 19-year-olds are very mature.
Big yikes.
And just the fact that you say that means that you do realize that's almost a minor, and yes, this person might be of age, but your life experience as a 27-year-old who has had a few jobs, who has a life of their own, who supports themselves on their own, is so much different to someone who just left school and is no experience in life whatsoever, and is so gullible and kind of still in a very parental environment, and is kind of...
I mean, she just probably graduated, a 19-year-old just graduated from high school.
Exactly. It's so, you know, looking for someone to protect them and take care of them in a sense, and you're the one who kind of takes on this role as the man, because you're obviously on a much higher stage of life, so you can pay for stuff. You give her an amount of independence because you're not a parent, you're technically a partner, but the power dynamic is so fucked up in that situation because you're the one who holds the power. You may not be the parent because you have sex with that person probably and you treat them sort of as an equal, but you're really not. You're probably the one who's supporting that person, who's taking them out on dates, who's telling them about life and experiences and kind of using your own age advantage for your own good in a sense.
Age, which comes obviously with experience and financial stability, blah 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 blah. And honestly, it's very disgusting because you're literally putting yourself in a higher power position to manipulate someone else. It's much easier to manipulate a 19-year-old woman than a 27-year-old woman.
Let's make it clear that it's not the same if someone was 50 and dated someone who's 27. It's a totally different situation because if you're both adult, you may be at different stages of life, but let's say, you know, you're both working, you're both had some experiences, they may be different, but it's a way different contrast than for someone who's like barely a child, and yet that's not like as normalized.
Yeah, and yet like exactly those 50-year-olds will still go to the early 20s, barely legal age, and that's very disturbing. And I feel like this type of behavior has been so normalized. Like, we live in a proper cancel culture. We cancel people for nothing and for everything, yet DiCaprio is discarding women as soon as they turn 25 and go to the youngest possible, like a 19. He would go for an 18 if he would go even younger, I feel, if it was possible. And we are like, funny. It's not funny.
It's not funny. And you know, I'm a big fan of trash TV, as you know, and I was watching Selling Sunset, which is this Netflix show about realtors, and there is like these two brothers that own like the company, and one of them is famously known for kind of dating young girls, including like girls in the office, and he was in a relationship with this girl who was like 30 something, so she was quite mature, and then after the breakup he was the one who wasn't ready for like a family with her, which is why they broke up. But then he started dating someone who was like in her mid-20s, I think, as far as I remember. And I was like, this is so wrong. And it was kind of eventually like called out in the show by someone else, I guess, let's say, like one of the clients, and she was like, why is that okay? You're clearly just want to have someone who looks up to you because you know your worth as a man with a woman your age.
Oh no, yeah, totally.
It's not the same as your worth with a much younger woman.
No, totally. This type of quote-unquote attraction comes from a place of insecurity. It does, because a 10, 20 difference, the gap, younger than you, she's gonna look up to you much more than on the same, because I don't know, I don't want to be rude, but in average, women tend to be more stable financially at 31 compared to a man, in average.
Yeah.
So you're literally dealing with an equal, even possible superior than you, and your masculine ego cannot handle that. So let me go to a 19-year-old who just graduated high school, and I'm gonna look so cool and amazing to her. And it's, again, this type of behavior, I feel, is pretty much trained. The fact that we don't call it out enough and we keep just joking about it, or even just give stupid excuses like what that guy said that you told about, like, oh, she's young but mature. And I feel like as a society, not just men, generally we associate that, like, oh yeah, but girls mature earlier.
Yeah, because we're like attracted to, it's a very like stemming from misogyny kind of concept that girls are the ones who are supposed to be like, you know, family protectors. Like, I mean, come on, like, girls were supposed to have children at like 15 back in the day. Like, obviously that's not normal. That's like,
which again comes from this idea that like they mature earlier, therefore it's okay.
Exactly. So it's kind of the same as normalizing that behavior, which we don't do anymore. So why are we still normalizing guys 10 years older dating minors?
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up, because I really feel this is an idea that's so impregnated in us that comes really far, far, far behind. You would marry all 15 or even early, like 12-year-olds to grown men because that girl got her period, therefore she's a woman. A 12-year-old, okay? Because she got her period at 12 or at 11, okay, she's ready to marry, she's ready to have kids. And I feel this idea that womanhood, like a proper womanhood adult life, starts at the age of 12 for a girl is super twisted, distorted, sexist, and disturbing. Because that's not true.
And yet boys will be boys till they're 50, you know?
Exactly. Like, you know, I think we talked about this in the pilot episode, that boys will be boys kind of behavior, but what makes me very sad thinking about is like, okay, boys will be boys, but girls will never just be girls. You don't allow girls to just be girls. You don't allow for a 12-year-old to just be a 12-year-old who probably still likes to play with Barbies, probably still likes to watch Disney films, who just wants to watch Twilight. No, she becomes a sexual object because she has her period and her breasts are developing.
Yeah.
She's only 12. She's never allowed to have a girl. We have our childhood stripped from us because we become sexual objects to someone else. And in that way, it also not only is denying our childhood and to have a proper childhood and being pressured to go out and be, you know, looked at, which is like the worst, like this thing of gays, like you turn 12, or you not even turning like 12 possessive, like you earn breasts or you earn whatever. And everyone starts looking at you, and
it's grown men that you are like fear of. You don't know them; they're like strange men to you,
and it's so confusing at that age because you're still as a preteen, and then going to teenage. Your body's changing every day. You don't know exactly. You obviously start exploring your sexuality of like even just touching yourself and so that you're still discovering your body, and all of a sudden you're actually just a body to everyone else. So you can't even properly explore your own sexuality because you're being already sexualized by someone else, which is every man around you.
No, it's really insane. Like when I look back when I was like 13, 14, like 15, the different kind of like male gaze and the way it felt, it's so different to like what it is now. And I remember I would like, you know, be alone on a train, or I would like walk with my friends on a street in like a little town, and like I would wear like a cute short skirt just because it was trendy at the time. And I remember like men screaming at us from cars and like getting out and stopping on a street, and I remember feeling extremely uncomfortable and, you know, just trying to like get out of this awkward situation. And we're kind of like taught to learn how to get out of these situations from a very young age instead of teaching men how to not get us in these situations in the first place, which is just so incredibly messed up. And I was also like in a Catholic school, and I remember like we had uniforms, so it was just like shirts, but there are also like quite strict rules as to like what, you know, we should or shouldn't wear. And I remember like a priest who's not supposed to be thinking about these things screaming at us, having like a rage fit in the class when we were like 14 that someone was wearing a short skirt. Saying that it was distracting to the boys. No, it was probably distracting to you. And that's why you were like being so aggressive about it. And it's just so incredibly messed up that you have to feel in this sexual way at such a young age in a response to an older man who could be your father,
or
even older. And it's just absolutely disgusting. And the fact that it happens way less as you get older and you become in your own mind way more attractive because you become a confident woman, you discover yourself, you find out who you are, you find out who you like, how you dress, how you look, you find your own style. And yet you somehow become less desirable because you're less gullible.
Yeah, and it is disturbing just by the simple fact that we are both 23, so we've been legal adults for around 5 years, yet we've been catcalled more when we were teenagers, and we've been catcalled so many times even though we're not adults for that long.
Yeah, I haven't been catcalled for years. And I remember when I was 15, 14, it would happen every time me and my friends would walk out of school.
I know, and it's just, it's so hard for me to speak about these topics because it generally makes me so mad that I'm often out of words. Like now I wear a lot of skirts, and I wear most of the time dresses with skirts that are long. Personally, I really like them, but I won't deny that this preference grew during my teenage years. Because there was this one time that I was wearing a short skirt and there was a man in the streets that tried to lift it up. And this man was old. This man was, of course, when you're a teenager, everyone seems much older than they are, but I'll say comfortably between 40 to 50. Tried to lift up a skirt of like a 15-year-old girl. Like, when I look at girls of that age, they're such children to me. Yeah. And it's appalling. How can a man do such things to a child? Because we're talking about children over here. Like, I don't care if that child has like 2 boobs. She's a child.
Yeah, even if she thinks she's an adult, she's not. And I think like internet and social media play a huge role in that like these days, because I think like we ourselves, we didn't necessarily sexualize ourselves at the time, but I think now you kind of, because of social media and seeing the trends and how like what's the ideal like style of a woman, so many like micro trends happening over and over again, and like TikTok dances that are already sexual and artists and everything like that. Young girls kind of try to do that to themselves right away. And I see like a lot of TikToks and Instagram videos. It's like I see those girls like doing these like sexy dances, and they're clearly like 15, 16.
Or even younger.
And I remember what me and my friend did at 16, which was kind of the equivalent, but it was like dancing to Disney songs and like recreating High School Musical dances for our parents, or like inventing random dance routines in my living room.
Oh my god, I remember doing that with a friend. Like, there was this Portuguese girl group that we were so into it, and they only had songs, and we just make choreographies, and then we present them to like our both families.
And it's kind of the equivalent. Like you can still see that it's kind of like,
but one is
the same thing, but like one is completely harmless, and one is so loaded with these expectations that are already put on them from such a young age.
And I honestly think that happens because they think they're being sexually liberated, and I feel like they're sold. I don't blame the girls at all, because I feel like they're being sold this false narrative that you're like a free woman. You're not a woman, you're a girl. You're like to be sexually liberated, you can like do those things for your own self. But what no one tells these girls, that creeps are still around there. You're just doing the work for them. You can say, you know, fuck patriarchy or fuck like sexism, go feminism, while twerking to the camera. That doesn't matter. That guy is still gonna
someone's still watching.
Someone is still watching, still in that video, putting in a Reddit subgroup where they all like thirst trap over you. You're just an object to them. You're just doing the work for them. And I think that's very harmful, because they're gonna reach their 20s or later on, and I think they might regret it. So I feel like I really would like to send all this advice to those girls. Like, I don't blame it at all, because they're also still young. They don't critically look into things as much. And I think different from us, that we kind of grew with social media appearing, so we saw the beginnings of almost every single social media that exists. They don't. They go straight up into this world, and
you're just trying to be cool, as everyone does.
As everyone does. Years. And if you keep normalizing that, like, you should never sexualize yourself. Like, there's no. I understand this thing of being sexually liberated, but that comes into your personal life, not sexualizing yourself online to
others, for the views of others.
That you don't even know. There's no way you can be a liberated woman if you keep tying yourself to sex at the age of 15.
Yeah, because then you're making yourself the product. And I read this somewhere that like this over feminism, like this idea of like, you know, being liberated, what you just said, is literally a product of misogyny in a sense, because
I completely agree.
It comes back like really backhanded against us, that we think we're doing it for ourselves, but in the end they're the ones benefiting from it.
Exactly, because
and it gives us like a false feeling of control,
but it's not.
It's very, very sense. I don't know, it's really fucked up. Like,
because one thing is like, I don't know, posting a sexy photo, another thing is sexualizing yourself. Those are two completely different concepts. Because like, as you and me, we have put it like a sexy photo of ourselves in like a bathing suit or whatever, because we like that picture and we feel good in it. Another thing is sexualizing your whole online content to be strictly about sex and selling sex,
or to appear like more mature, or to know
than you actually
are,
or
to think like, oh, this is gonna appeal to people, so I'm gonna post it.
That just contributes to this normalization of sexualizing young girls when they're actually just children. because these girls, they might look mature, like older than they actually are,
but
but they are not.
They just think this is gonna get attention. They're like, oh, I'm gonna twerk to the camera, so it's gonna get attention, or I'm gonna do this viral sexy dance, so it's gonna get more views. And like, where do you think these views come from?
Yeah,
the guys.
You don't want that attention, babe. I really don't get. You don't want that attention at all.
You really don't. And I feel like as you get older, you kind of realize like what kind of attention is solicited and what kind is not. And like, I really kind of relate to that because I do love attention. Like, I can't say no, and I do like sexual attention as well. And it's kind of, you know, it's nice to feel desired, and it's nice to know that like you feel attractive to someone else, but there is also a lot of unwanted attention that comes with that, and for me it's very disturbing, and I really hate it. And it happens in a lot of places, like work, like professional environments, like university, and like places where you don't want to be assessed by those things, and you don't want to be assessed as a woman, and you don't want to be assessed as someone attractive, and you just want to completely detach yourself from that. And
you don't want to like have yourself as a person being connected to your sex appeal ever.
Exactly.
Being a young girl or not, I am not a young girl anymore. I'm a grown woman, and I don't want to sexualize myself still, because the problem of sexualizing a minor is obviously very pedophilic, but you should not want that no matter what age you are.
Yeah, and I feel like that unwanted attention is very disturbing. At some point in life, kind of start noticing it like in a very aware way, and you start seeing a difference between like the wanted and unwanted attention. I'm reading this book now, which is literally called Preliminary Materials for like Young Girl Theory, and it talks about this like theory of a young girl, which is kind of something that stems from capitalism, and how like a young girl became this like archetype for a customer and a product in the at the same time. And right now, like, this book talks about it as like a non-gendered and ageless thing, because at this point it's so ingrained in the society that this young girl is sort of like an archetype of a consumer and a product. She's someone who's, you know, who's being assessed by their like visual appearances and by their like attributes and by their selling points, and she's also someone who assesses her worth as a product. So she's someone who's looking to enhance her value all the time, who's looking into new products to consume to enhance her value, new makeup, new clothes, new styles, all of that things.
But I feel like that notion has been like kind of within us for such a long time, because we always valued like a woman through their appearance, and then we always think of the most ideal woman ever is through their youthfulness.
Yep.
So technically the younger the better, and if you stayed young forever, great, you know, but you can't, so then you become like the complete opposite, that is like completely discardable and better off dead. And that's why comes the prey for the young girls. It's a trained behavior. I genuinely think that even the attractiveness that men think they have is actually slightly programmed within them through all the media that we consumed. That obviously comes from a lot of religious beliefs back in the day. That comes from, you know, in aristocracy, like marrying young girls of 12 to, I don't know, 20, 30-year-old men.
Yeah.
Like, it really comes from so back. And also from the, you know, religious beliefs, especially in the West, over like, you know, the period thing and like, you know, conceptual kids. But I also read a lot of classic novels.
Yeah.
And obviously that comes across with a lot of like sexist things, but I can go over that. But something that's very common and keeps appearing all the time is that when we refer to a young boy, it's more like what type of man he will be. This like either successful or not successful, blah blah. But it's more about his merits and his achievements.
Yeah.
A lot of times when we refer to like a young girl, it's always at this like prepubescent bloom, or like before blooming into a seductive woman. We have this already like look and gaze into this fresh meat. Almost like it's very disturbing when you read it and think about these like terms that are used by these men writers over these young girls. Like I remember reading this book by Émile Zola, a French writer. It's called A Love Story. It's a very interesting book, but there's one character who's like a 12 turned 13-year-old, and the way he describes her, like sometimes just waiting, looking at the window, like the seductiveness of her
like she's
skin.
just waiting to be noticed, you know.
Yeah, and it's like as if it's like a woman to be.
Yeah,
that's what I meant, like in the beginning of like girls cannot be girls.
They're just like a woman to
there's
be.
Always a pre-woman, a pre-cooked meat.
Yeah.
And it's very disturbing how from a very young age that's how you determine to be forever the rest of your life, which ends at 25, by the way. It's just very disturbing, and like it hasn't changed.
Also, this idea of adult women depicting teenagers is very twisted, because you all see that like in so many teen movies. Obviously, the actresses that play the teens are 20-something at least. Sometimes they're in their 30s. How can you have a woman in their 30s portray an archetype of a 15, 13-year-old?
But you know, like, even like those shows, especially when they're like made by men, they will justify, for example, in Euphoria, they will like justify the over-sexualization every time they like an interview or whatever like confronts them about it. It's like, oh, I'm just like depicting the realities of teenagehood, and besides, all my actresses are overage, so it's okay. And I'm like, no,
it's not, because you're creating a character that's supposedly 15, 16, and you can't stop people who are in that age demographic from watching it, because you're depicting them, and they will look at those people and they will compare themselves to them, and rightfully so. That's totally understandable. How are they supposed to feel okay about their own bodies if they see a woman who's fully developed, who has boobs, who has clear skin because she's past her hubris and like period, and has makeup artists and skincare specialists and all of that, and she looks perfect and she has a ton of makeup on, and then you look at yourself in the mirror with like pimples and glasses and like braces, and you're like, why do I not look like that, and why am I depressed?
And even those features actually tend to be very sexualized in either Halloween costumes, or even like you go into like porn and stuff, and it's
like the schoolgirl,
teenage. They might, I mean, in the dark sides, they're actually teenagers, but you'll see like also adult women portraying teenagers. I feel like there's this ideal, like this sexual ideal fantasy that's like of the sexy baby. So you either sexualize a young girl or you infantilize a woman.
Yeah.
To fit this, you know,
this space,
which really like blurs the lines of like, and it becomes very ambiguous age, because it's just like trying to mimic youth and youthfulness, and also like a minor youthfulness, mind you. So it's just very disturbing, because you have all the excuses possible. You have like the tool on creeps that will like sexualize the young girls that are minors, and then we have the other ones who would be pedophiles otherwise if it was not for the law. So you have like these awful like, you know, age countdowns for like, I don't know, Billie Eilish, who was like a teenager for like in the beginning of her career, and you have a countdown until she becomes 18 so you can like legally sexualize her.
Yeah, it's so fucked up. There's, as you said, the young schoolgirl trope, but then also like micro trends like little bows and bunnies and ballet cord and all those things that like young girls tend to do is also becoming like sexy and cute and fashion, and it's portrayed on women in their 30s again. And then obviously these girls who are actually doing these things and, you know, finding them appealing because it's girly and fun and cute, they look at those women and they're like, I wear the same thing, but yet I don't look the same, and why is that, you know?
But I think there's a bit of resurgence of women in their late 20s, I think maybe even like a little bit early 30s, but I think more mid-20s, who obviously are already mature, and they're creating a lot of these trends. But I honestly feel is like for themselves, and I honestly feel they're creating this, you know, either be like lifestyle / outfits, fashion content to other girls.
Yeah, to like reclaim their girlhood.
Yeah, they are in a way reclaiming their girlhood. I think there's like a very good side on the internet right now of those trends that are actually used for good. You don't see in comments that often or usually, exactly because like of those men, exactly because this content is actually not made for them. Like these girls wearing like all these bows and cute dresses, you know, very girly things, sometimes even like young girly things, are not sexualized. In fact, I would even argue that are very asexual. And I think that's like a great thing, because when we look into like, you know, all like the feminist waves, it's always in relation to sex.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, in evaluating women rights, blah, 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 in relation to sex, gender forms, and etc. I think what I would really like to see feminists going into is what I see in my Instagram feed of girls dressing up for themselves, reclaiming their girlhoods, which obviously these all women on their mid-20s. They're like mature, they look back and probably want to recreate what they never had.
Yeah.
because at the age of 15 or at the age of 12, they were being sexualized by a gross man in the tube. Now they're 20, they can freely use that frilly dress. They can freely use that, booty shorts. They can freely use those bows and not be sexualized for it. For once, they can actually dress for themselves, for other girls, and it's content created just for them. And I think that's very liberating, because for the first time, I would love to see a woman to express her interests, no matter how girly they are, with no sex attached to it whatsoever. I would love to see feminists grow into being either against, in favor of sex, blah, blah, blah. You have all these waves, and then reach to a point that it's completely asexual. Stop associating women, and especially minors who are children, to sex all the time. So I really like that side of the content online, because it's really going into how it should be. Women and girls just expressing themselves being happy, and not being ridiculized as well for it.
No, that's very true. And the thing is that I don't know, at least obviously I can't speak for the male experience, but I've never encountered boys in their 15, 14 having the same experience in a sense.
No,
I've never seen that online or anywhere. And you can have boys that are 16 or 17 that are being called cute or whatever, and that is not to say that their varies doesn't happen within genders, because it does, and obviously it's an issue everywhere, but it's so much more prevalent for women and so much more normalized for us that it just becomes part of our reality, so we just kind of start to ignore it. And I think that's so wrong. As I said, clothing and everything, being modeled on adults and being presented on adults, and the whole notion even of modestification of clothing the older you get. It's so fucked up, because when girls are little, 6 or 5, they're wearing really short skirts, and it's really cute, and you have babies running naked in the beach and no one gives a shit. And then as soon as a girl is becoming more and more mature, you start dressing her more and more up, and then she becomes 13, 14, and the skirt length goes to knee length, and it's not appropriate anymore for you to wear a sleeveless dress to school or to a function, or go to a family wedding or whatever. And when you're a girl, you start questioning it, and you're why are you not letting me wear this? You don't understand it. How do you tell your child that you can't wear this because your creepy uncle might look at you the wrong way?
Instead of saying to the creepy uncle, can
Please
you stop
doing that?
Or no, don't invite him at all.
Exactly. And it's just so messed up, and that unwanted attention comes from so many ways. And even if you think about girls being asked oh, are you dating anyone, do you have a boyfriend, whatever, it starts at such a young age. When I was 15, 16, even 17, I was not interested in guys in any way. I only had my girlfriends, and I really wasn't interested in dating. I might have liked Hugh Grant in a romantic comedy, that's about it. I might have liked the idea of having a boyfriend, but did I really like guys or understood them? No, not really. It only came about to me much later, and way more consciously in a way. And the fact that I was stopped on the street by people who are in their 40s to ask me where are you going? Do you want to give me your number? I was terrified,
Of course.
And it's just so sad that it's a norm, and that we have to put up with it, and that it's perpetuated in films and culture and fashion and trends, and that it's not being talked about enough, I think.
I feel we talk about it. When I was doing light research for this, I still see a lot of girls and women talking about it. But I don't think it's ever taken seriously, or even into even legal measures. I don't know, cancel DiCaprio. Cancel him. Say what you're doing is wrong. Oh, no, he's an environmentalist.
Stop.
He's a great actor. Oh, that's fine. No.
Stop emphasizing stupid dress codes in schools. Ban teachers who say things like your skirt is too short.
So we talk about this, but there's no actions after that. And obviously it's not our fault, because we are talking about it, but no one goes beyond that to actually do an action to start changing these things. I mean that in society-wise, we actually don't go after, because so many girls will comment oh yeah, when I was 13, my mom or my dad told me to wear a longer skirt. 13. I keep repeating the ages, because let's be conscious about how old we're talking about. It's just crazy. damn, I really need wine for this.
I know. Yeah, it's just really sad. I don't know. I feel like it's the worst when you kind of become like really conscious of it and you go into like real life situations and you get yourself in those really uncomfortable moments when you just see people perceiving you for your looks instead of like who you actually are, and focusing on that a lot.
I think there's also like this notion that people keep putting the focus on you, like you are changing, you are no longer a girl, you're a woman. When you're like 13, you're like, your body changes, so it's you're creating this attention, you are becoming sexy or whatever. You're not. You're not at all. But there's this constant emphasis that we actually see reflected on media and like films and TV series, that it's you who are changing, so obviously this will happen. And I think I mentioned this film I saw, which was a Czech film called Valerie and Her Week of Wonders. And one of the things I really like about this film, which is basically about a girl who gets her period and everything else around her starts to change. So literally she is a child and all of a sudden she's a woman. And we see in the film like the actress is actually the age of 13, same as the character. And this is like a very surrealist film. There's like monsters, vampires, blah, blah, blah. But in a way, it's like all very highly symbolic and metaphorical. And what I like about this film compared to like other types of media is the fact that the emphasis is not the fact that she changed, because we are looking at her as the character. She actually did not change. Yeah, she got her period, but she didn't change. She's exactly the same girl. She's still the same child. However, all her world around her becomes different. All these like men and guys who are just normal become at her monsters. They literally become monsters. Always watching her, always constantly preying on her. There's one scene where a priest literally tries to rape her, and because she's now seductive, because she just got her period and now she's a woman, you know, and she doesn't even have like a body of a woman, she's the body of a child. And most important out of everything, her mind is of a child, her mindset is of a child. She is not actually a woman. And I think what I really like about this film is that instead of putting the emphasis like, oh, you changed, no, everyone else is the one who changed. Everyone else has this perception of her that you as the viewer are seeing. It's not true. That's what I really like about the film, because so many others put the perspective like completely reversed.
As if it's like your fault that you've changed somehow, you know, that like the natural process of growing up is like your fault and you kind of stop being who you were before. And it's just so faulty. It's like, you know, putting the blame of victims of sexual abuse and stuff like that. It's kind of the same mechanism.
Exactly the same, And this like predatory behavior keeps being, especially like in Hollywood, like I'm not even gonna go into it that much, but it keeps like being excused constantly by the fact that like she is young but she's quite mature, like
she looks mature,
or she looks mature, or older,
she appears to be aware of what's going on,
you know, or like she's the one who makes advances, is like seductive, so what can me, the poor man, what can I do?
You should know better.
You should know better. You're a grown-ass man. Like, please. As we stated in the beginning, like, this whole theoretical attraction is just pedophilic based on power and status. So it's not actually real. Seen it in fucking paintings. Seen it in literature from, like, 300 years ago. Seen it in films released yesterday. So it's so ingrained and normalized that even girls believe that they are attracted to older men.
No, it's very true. Like, you're like, oh, I'm so mature for my age. Maybe, like, someone who's older than me will give me what I want, which is, like, someone responsible and whatever. I don't know. It's just, it's really bad. And
maybe that even happens as well. Like, we are asked as girls to be also more mature than we should be. Like, we are asked, like, so young to already start taking care of the house. We are asked so young to think about all of these things, that we are, like, also a bit forced into this maturity a lot of times. When I was young, and you happened the same thing, so I'm pretty sure you relate, I got my period very late to, like, the normal average. I got my period only at 14, which means that my body also starts to develop around that time, which is late compared to a lot of other girls. And of course, at the time, I felt like shit. I was like, damn, I'm not like woman enough, like me at 14 thinking about these things. But when I look back, I'm actually quite glad, because it allowed me to actually have a childhood. I still did not have this body of a woman at the age of 12 or 13, so I was actually actually able to still play with my dolls and still go to see Disney films. I was able to go see that and not be fully ridicularized because I legit still look like a child.
Yeah.
But that's all it takes. Because I had another friend who, too much to her bad luck, she got her period at 8.
Wow.
Which is super young, which means that like by 9-10 she already has like breasts, and she constantly got harassed on it. And just like thinking about like a 9 and 10-year-old suffering these things when she's even more clearly a child is petrifying, and it makes me literally so sad when she was telling me these things, and I felt so sorry for her, and the more glad that it did not happen to me. And I feel so really like sorry for her, and it's just so disgusting, and it's so bad, and the fact that none of these men, because she was never sexualized by women, so I'm sorry, but the men here are the problem.
They are.
And you don't do nothing to change it. She suffered such trauma. I asked like all men, imagine you being 8 and being sexualized by someone. I'm pretty sure like any guy who suffered from sexual abuse, we are the only ones who will understand that. And it's honestly horrible that it takes to like very extreme measures for a man to relate to women in such a case. And even the fact that precocious puberty is becoming more and more apparent. I saw some studies that like in the last 10 years it regressed so much, like, and actually what I love about these studies is that they're always over preoccupied because this happened mostly with girls.
Yeah.
So of course boys are also getting like their puberty earlier, but it's happening more and more often to girls specifically.
Yeah.
When I try to look up as to why, I think it's mostly to do with like products that are like in makeup and other like hygienic
or like
beauty.
processed food as well.
Yeah.
You know, like you just mature earlier than you should.
But what I'm liking about the studies is like they are actually very preoccupied that this is happening a lot to girls specifically.
Yeah.
So girls are getting more often to get their periods at 8 instead of me who got at 14.
It's really sad. It's really sad.
And it doesn't help the fact that we still do not condemn these type of behaviors from men at all, to the point that we even encourage girls of 15 or younger to do those sexy dances, and that's liberating when it's not. It's just participating on this.
Yeah, it really isn't. And imagine like a dance like this happening at like a school, and like all the dads looking at the other kids being this is like cute and sexy, like what the fuck, you know? Like it's so messed up from the start. It's just, I can't even find the words to describe it because it makes me so...
I think this was the episode that we needed the most wine for because it's just too much.
I know, but it's just like, I'm tired of it, you know? It's like, you just want to be yourself and you become this idea, this object, all of it, like all at once.
Yeah. Most women are in fact, one way or another, traumatized by this sexualization they all suffered. Like, I challenge any woman to come to me and said that she was not either catcalled or harassed or, you know, in some way sexualized when she was a teenager.
No, I don't know any girl my age who didn't have a similar experience or who didn't get like unwanted messages on social media. Like one of my closest friends, I remember, her mom is a teacher and she like teaches like in her house because she's like a private teacher, and she used to have a student who she became like quite close with, and he was like 25 or something at the time, and she was like what, 15, 16?
Yeah,
and
like 10 years of difference.
He fancied her and he stalked her.
Fuck.
He because he used to come to her house for classes, and he stalked her on social media, and he kept, you know, asking her out, and he kept writing messages like, oh, you're so attractive, blah blah blah, and she wasn't interested, and she said it multiple times, and she obviously flagged it to her mom, who, you know, limited their interactions and blah blah blah, all of that. Like she stopped having him as a student, and the guy kept harassing her, trying to like come in contact with her in so many ways. Then it took like really strict action from her mom to be like, please stop doing that. Yeah. Like you can't do that, that's so wrong. And she was like super attractive, like she is super attractive, she's a very attractive woman now, but the fact that as a girl, she had to be exposed to that, and I remember she was telling it to me, and she was so traumatized by it, and she was so uncomfortable to be in her house when her mom had lessons with him. It's just so messed up in the first place.
Yeah, and I just really hate how when we express these feelings, and of course when we express these feelings among other women, you know, it's obviously very comforting because we realize that it happened to all of us. But it's very disheartening when we try to express these to like other men, even like, you know, friends or like our partners in our lives, and we are so easily dismissed. And it's very disheartening because the change for the better will never happen if men don't help, because after all, this isn't men's fault, and men who are like the nice guys, I guess, should hold their counterparts accountable.
Yeah, they should hold their friends accountable. I feel like even when they're like become adult and you flag that and they're like, oh, you're probably just like encountered a creep, and I'm like, no, that's like literally every single man that I encountered in my teen years.
Yeah, because it's not one, it's not two, it's not three, it's many.
It's countless. It's strangers on the street, it's people in school, it's teachers, it's professors, and again, it's people in your family, you know?
They just keep defending, and I'm like, just stop. Assume it's a problem. We all know it's a problem.
Yeah.
It has been a problem for decades, for centuries. So just stop being a dick
rather
and help
than
each other out.
Assuming innocence, assume guilt, because honestly, talking to other girls, that's what it is.
Well, and it's in this very hopeful, happy tone that we're gonna wrap up this episode.
I think so. If you're a girl, I think you're most probably are, because I guess that's our demographic.
Well, to be fair, I didn't want it any other way.
We relate to you, and we would love to hear your stories if you'd want to share them.
Yeah, definitely. So we're still trying to figure out this thing with the Spotify, but we also have our email available if you'd like to share your story when you were young, like as your teenager. Just bring in some sisterhood. We will hear you. We can even like, I don't know, just look into them, read them. I don't know how many we'll get, but
get you some
do
words of hope and relatable stories.
Even if we don't talk about it in the podcast, it'll be nice to like hear them and even respond to them. So yeah, do check our email below if we don't have any like box to like for a question to respond of any stories. And just so you know, you're not alone. We literally all suffered for it. And if you are our listener and you are actually a teenager in those ages, stay strong. We're better than that. We're here to help you, and make sure to always communicate any type of behavior you suffer from other men doing this to you immediately to either your parents or anyone else you trust to like fix it.
Exactly. And if you're a guy, go check your friends and check yourself, because it's very important. And call out your friends and normalize that, because if they're your friends, they will listen to you, and if they're not your friends, they will ignore you, and you will know. But be better than the mainstream, basically.
Also, if you have anyone who needs to listen to this, just share this episode and be like, educate yourself.
Exactly.
All right. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you very soon.
Bye.